Hey there, Jimmy Franklin. I hope everyone had a great summer. On October the 22nd of this year, I will complete my 40th year in this business. To commemorate this upcoming anniversary, I'm putting out some videos that I hope will have some valuable content and perhaps an enjoyable story or two. If you get nothing else from them, you should come to the conclusion that if a clown like me can succeed, then practically anyone else can. The most popular request I have had, and the one I'll start today with, is a video discussing the circumstances that led me into this industry. In thinking back, I divided my 40 years into 4 very distinctive 10-year periods. In the spirit of not staying on too long and boring everyone too much, today I'll discuss my first 10 years. Most of which was the 1980s. How I got in the business is really a pretty interesting story. Despite having a good parental support and opportunity, my immaturity, laziness, and lack of self-discipline back then led me to eventually dropping out of college. By the time I was 26, I was married and pretty much going nowhere. The jobs I worked in my 20s were exactly the kind of jobs a slacker college dropout could get in the 1980s. But in the summer of '82, I somehow landed a job that I thought had a future. So we contracted on a starter home in Katy, $56,500, Harris County bond money, 13.75%. Thank you very much. Friday, July 30th, 1982 is my 27th birthday and the day we were scheduled to close on our home. Up to that point, it ranked as one of the most exciting days of my life. But that morning, my boss brought me into his office and let me know business was way off and he was going to have to let me go. So that was my trifecta day. 27th birthday, first day of home ownership, laid off all in one day. So the decision was made to close on the home anyway, as with the belief that the job would be replaced in short order. As I found out quickly, there wasn't much demand for a college dropout with my minimal skill set, and nothing really materialized. Within a month or so, I made the decision to go to real estate school. I didn't have any vision. I really didn't have a plan. My thought was, well, nothing else has worked. Let's try this. In addition to having a sphere of influence of roughly 0, I had no experience in sales, nor did I have any money to tide me over until I figured out if I could have any level of success. Also, unlike today where it's insane how much help new agents have access to, mentoring, coaching, and assistance was pretty much non-existent, at least where I officed. And it was pre-cell phone, pre-internet, pre-fax machine, so everything moved slower. And last, if all that wasn't enough, something I didn't know that no one really could have known, Houston was headed into a disastrous decade that would lead to many foreclosures and homes selling at a fraction of their 1970s value. Many of you remember the financial crisis that began steamrolling in 2008, but compared to Houston in the 80s, the financial crisis was like a trip to Disney World. Quick example, the home I just told you we paid $56,500 for in '82. 1986, 4 years later, I sold the same floor. I listed the same floor plan in the same neighborhood in fixed up condition, and the $26,000 I got was slightly above market value at the time. So to say I was thrown into the fire would be an understatement. The best way I can describe my attitude and goals during those years was just doing what I could to survive. Going on listings where the seller owed way more money on his mortgage than his home was worth. Knowing that as soon as I told him that, he was probably going to tell me to get the hell out of his house. Showing $500 a month leases on a Sunday afternoon, stuff like that. But I would say in relation to other realtors in that area, I became relatively successful. Although I have to admit the bar was very low. But the money I made was still just enough to survive. Any commission I earned was, an electric bill or a minimum Visa car payment waiting to happen. So just the way it was then. But by 1990, I remember this, I was 35 years old. I've been in business 8 years. I now had a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, and my net worth was zero. I actually remember where I was when I totaled up my assets and my debt obligations and realized they were exactly the same. I remember feeling depressed and wondering how I was ever going to get out of this mess. Of course, if you know me, you know I can typically find something amusing in situations that really aren't very funny. And I remember my 35-year-old self quietly cursing out my 20-year-old self for skipping way too many college lectures to go to the pool hall. And, you know, I remember saying, you know, maybe if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be in this god-awful mess. I wouldn't be in this terrible business. So that was the 80s. But in the 90s, the clouds began to part a little bit. Sky started to clear. I remember a real special memory that I had was my 9th year in the business, receiving a commission. I remember the address, and I got a commission check. And I remember that was the first commission that I'd ever received in my 9 years that didn't have a bill waiting on it that was either due or late. I also remember in 1992, my 10th year, I made the RE/MAX 100% Club, which means I made $100,000 in commission for the year, which means I probably made about $100,022. And, you know, for those of you team leaders that make that much, or at least your teams made that much in a month, it really wasn't as bad as it sounds. Not that many people made a lot more money than that in those days. I'm not even certain RE/MAX had created the next club up yet, because only a few superstars like Ronnie Matthews and Gary Stallings would have qualified anyway. So things were getting better, but by the end of my 10th year, I was 37 years old and I had very little to show for my efforts. And yet, by the end of my next 10 years, in 2002, at age 47, had I been remotely interested in doing so, I could have comfortably retired and traveled and played golf on what money I had put away. So in my next video, I'll discuss my second 10 years, and some of the things I did that allowed me to go from pretty much dead-ass broke after my first 10 years to being financially secure and in a position to retire at age 47. Hope everyone has a great September. See you next time.